Hello, my name is Yvette, and welcome to Report Out. It's not very pleasant out there today, is it? It's a bit wet and cold and windy, but some of us, have had the most fantastic morning. The launch of our own quality improvement network has taken place this morning over at the LGI. And it's been really fantastic. We had an external speaker, Rob Farnham, who is the Director of Primary Care Improvement for NHS-IMD, but he's been in improvement world for a long time. And we also had a selection of speakers who have done QI projects throughout the Trust. And one of the highlights, I have to say, was the last speaker, who was Mike from Surgical Assessment Unit, who's one of our ward environmental porters. And it was wonderful to learn more about him, but also to hear him reporting out about his QI contribution, and we hope to hear a lot more from him in the future, as we did from everybody, but it was wonderful. So only one value stream report out this week, and it's from acute general surgery. It's from RPIW 4, the acute surgical patient journey, and it's the 60-day report out. And we've got Claire, Nasira, Rachel and Becky here, but I don't know who's coming forward to do the reporting out, but I know they've all contributed to the RPIW, so come on down.
My name's Rachel Jenkins. I'm the team leader for acute and obstetric theatres here at St James's.
My name's Rebecca Lees, and I am one of the team members. I'm actually a healthcare in theatre, but for the next 6 weeks I am a semi-acute theatre liaison lead.
So first I'm just going to give a brief overview of what the RPIW4 was about, and it's about the acute surgical patient journey. And we were looking at the process of a patient being advised that they need emergency surgery, and the process that takes to be able to then get into the anaesthetic room in theatre. And there's quite a few obstacles to overcome, and it's quite complex a journey for that patient regarding what information needs to be gathered to make sure that the patient's ready to come to the theatre environment, make sure all documentation is completed, regarding how that patient's booked within our systems, and the actual patient getting into our anaesthetic room. So, as last 30 days has been looking at, I have 2 acute theatres, and we've been mainly focusing on my second theatre, which has 5 lists of semi-acute patients that are booked into those. And from the RPIW we found that these weren't being used efficiently, although we do have issues with theatre capacity, other surgical specialities taking precedent because of urgent procedures that need to be done. The listed cases for the semi-acute list wasn't being booked properly. From the RPIW we found that there were numerous gaps regarding how that information was gathered, and we needed to actually overview them to see where we could improve those systems. So luckily Becky said she would happily do this role, and she's been doing it up for the last 2 weeks. So first 2 weeks were more or less making sure that we had the right IT groundwork done, so she was able to step into that role. And then last week it was just kind of seeing what that role entitled, what information she needed to get and who she needed to speak with, and what processes were already in place that were working and what wasn't in place that we needed to improve on. So this week we've been trying to get that job role to see what that looked like, and that's a lot of the information is from Becky's actual work last week. So a lot of it is liaising with our team and my coordinator, the boards that are obviously utilising the theatre, the specialities that are utilising that theatre, and just the groundwork that Becky had done from the previous week.
Hello, my name's Rebecca, I'll say it properly, but you can call me Becky. And I'm the semi-acute theatre liaison lead, and I have agreed to do this for 6 weeks. I started it last week. It was very stumbly last week because it was just like the first week getting into the role, because it's a brand new role, I had to just do it myself. So by Friday we had a live list up and running for urology and gynae, and normally urology take over a lot of the morning list, but I managed to fit a gynae in there as well, and I pre-booked them the day before. Now the list went okay, but we had some issues due to patients not waking up properly, but we still got the list done. We still got them 3 patients done and they could go home. Well, one of them had to stay in, but the rest of them could go home that day. So the pros of this job role so far, I've got loads of feedback from many members, JAL members, SAU members, anaesthetists, but a lot of it is my team members and JAL in particular, because we both work together to make sure that the patient gets through to theatre properly. So the pros are having an allocated person for that list or case on that day, so they can give continuity of care to that patient from when I book that patient, schedule that patient, and then I'll go to JAL that morning, I'll check that patient in, ask them any questions that they want to know. Then one of the other things that we were looking at was pre-waiting in theatres. Now, do we really need it? So I also have trialled run where when I've picked my patient up, I've got a trolley ready in the anaesthetic room, so the patient isn't sat there for a long period of time getting even more anxious. So I'm bringing them straight round to the anaesthetic room and get cracking straight on with it. Also good communication from JAL to theatre. Now, one of their problems have been they're not getting the patient's notes until the morning of their operation. So what I have been doing is running from SAU to JAL to see if there is any patients that have been booked, and had a look on our booking system, and then gone to SAU, made sure that all their notes are there, getting them ready, and then bringing them to JAL, so then they've got a bit of a heads up on who they're getting for their first 2 JAL patients in the morning. Also, a lot of people was like, it takes the pressure off theatre staff because you're not taking a person out of theatre to go pick that patient up. But I'm actually doing it, but then I'm going into theatre to make sure that the smooth running of my list is okay. So I helped them out as and when I needed, so I briefed and debriefed. Clear communication for the day and the morning of surgery. So like I say, working as a team, it's been really good because JAL have been really upbeat about it. There's still a couple of problems with SAU, but I think that's just going to be ongoing until we can fully get up and running. So the cons, we all have cons in anything that we do, but I've had to take it on the chin. So the cons is mainly difficult communication and barriers with other team members, i.e. consultants, anaesthetists, just unaware about what this actual role does and what it would benefit, and especially some of them are in such their own little ways that they like to get the drugs ready, go for a cup of coffee, then come back and then debrief and then go back again, and it's just like stopping theatres for the full hour. So I did speak to some of the consultant anaesthetists. Some of them were really lovely and upbeat about it, but obviously you have got the old school people that don't like it, which is fine, fair enough, everyone has their own opinion on it. So I spoke to them. However, we've got over them barriers. And this week, on Tuesday, we had both of the acute patients and the last one in theatre by 10 to 9. And then this morning, I've done my own little run around again. And I've managed to get all patients, the acute abscess JAL patients, in theatre, including though there were mishaps with SAU this morning, so I was just splitting myself into two. I was half in SAU, half in JAL, half in theatre, and we had the last patient in by 9:30. Now they'll get to go home about 1-2 o'clock this afternoon, so they're not taking a bed up for someone that really needs it. Also, the cons are urology take up, well, this is feedback, urology take up 2 mornings of the week, so a lot of the time they always book their patients, which is really good. They've got a scheduler for their patients, so I've been in contact with them patients. But like as of this morning, they were all inpatients on wards that were really, really poorly, and they had 3, and they didn't look at how the operation type, so a lot of them was quite complicated, putting to sleep long. And then we also had 2 gynae. Now some people, gynae and urology, think, well, they've got it, and I suppose it's down to whoever books first. So I tried explaining this to urology, and but to be fair, they are really on top and on form with booking, and they're happy to do whatever they need to do, and if it's really urgent, then they'll get put onto the acute list. Also fears that this role isn't going to work, and that it's a type 6 coordinator's role instead of a band 2 role. Now, this comes from team members, because a lot of team members are band 6s and they are in charge of acutes on certain days. So a lot of that was, why are you doing my job? Which I can understand, but and then as I explained more and more to them, they're sort of like, right, okay, but as I say, it's just the old people. Sorry. So, the real insider. This job role, it's been very challenging for the first 2 weeks. It's been a bit of tears, but more happy tears the last couple of days. So, I feel that this role is really helpful for especially acute and JAL, having that floater person going from in and out, like sorting all of the next day's lists and stuff out, and just the barriers that are there between SAU and JAL as well. Like, there's just no talking, there's just no communication there, and I think me just going in and taking that communication and just be like, oh, well, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we plan on doing, it's just broke down them barriers a little bit. So the first 2 weeks, and this was the end of last week, which was Friday, so I managed, one of the cons from JAL was that when patients were getting booked for acute abscesses, that they wasn't getting the correct information and the correct care plans and stuff in there. So JAL were having to run around that morning, put all that pack together, get all that different pieces of information, then speak to the patient about it, then consent the patient about things, then fill everything out, then get the patient ready. So that was blocking time up in itself. So I put these surgical packs on SAU last week. So they consist of a consent form, a booking form for acute theatres, an anaesthetic form in case they need one, a correct site surgery form, whether the abscess would be on the left or the right. And then I've also put in theatre care plan, and I've also put in a TED stocking VTE assessment and a patient disproperty claim. And now SAU don't have to do that part, but it's just so that it's in their notes for when they go to JAL, so JAL aren't having to run around and do them. Now, I've been given good feedback by JAL, and they said that all the patients up until this morning have all got them packs in situ, and it has basically, the patients just come in, they've just done the first checks, they've just got them to sign the property disclaimer, make sure that the correct site surgery is in there, got them dressed, and we'll be straight to theatre. So, progression for theatre and patient efficiency. So this is something that I'm working on, and this is something that I'm trying to get proofread. So what we found out was that we didn't have a pathway for acute abscess patients, like what to do before you come in and where you go that morning. So a lot of them patients are going back to SAU at 7, 8 o'clock on the morning when they should be in JAL at 7 a.m. So, and we found out a lot was getting given false information. So they was saying that they could drink right up till 6 o'clock, but that was any fluids, that wasn't clear fluids. So like as of the other day, we had a patient that drank a cup of tea because SAU said they could drink a cup of tea. They'd had some chewing gum. And then we noticed that advice slip on the right hand side. That was what they were giving out to patients, and when I looked on it, it was 5 years out of date. So it had, you can drink up until 4 o'clock, and then you can not eat after midnight, whereas now you can eat up until 2 a.m. and have 250 mils of clear fluids right up until 6 a.m. So I've come up with a little bit of a patient information leaflet, just with the main information that we need on there, like drinking, eating, before your operation, like what your operation requires, where you should go on the morning. So I've actually put a picture of the JAL doors on there, and and then I've put the JAL information, contact information, and also where it is, and I've given directions as well. So they've got a VIP leaflet there. But yeah, so they didn't have, they wasn't getting any of this information, and when I spoke to another patient on JAL the other day, they said that I got told that I couldn't eat because they didn't know what time they were getting done. So a lot of it is just breakdown in communications with SAU. So I just thought if it'd make it, I mean, I'm not being funny, but I wouldn't read that coming into coming into theatre the day before. It looks like an essay. Like, it's got nothing on it. It's got where do you go. It says you go to JAL, but then they're telling the patients to go back to SAU. So it's a bit like they're getting given like false communications. So I've got everything in there on it. I've had it sort of proofread, and now it's going through medical illustrations, and that should be done ASAP. I've got them to proofread it and send me a draft as well. So that's what we're working on in the next 4 weeks. Done?
Brilliant.
Thank you. I mean, I did a Gemba walk to theatres on Tuesday, I think it was, and I met Becky then, and she'd had one of her first successes, and you'd had your 2 gynae patients in and out by 10 to 9, which was fantastic. And it's wonderful, and it's very clear, Becky, to see the passion and enthusiasm that you've brought to this piece of improvement. So well done to you, to Rachel and the team. I guess for us, the important thing is to support you, because maybe you can't work at this pace all of the time, and we need to ensure that we've got. Well, we'll let you, but we also need some standard work, don't we? So that because you must be entitled to a holiday now and again. All right. But also we want to support you with some of those challenges. So before we offer the opportunity for questions for the rest of the audience, it's my very pleasant duty now to present a certificate, an advanced lean training certificate, to Tom Dickey. So Tom, come on down. Well done. And Tom, you're head of podiatry.
Yeah, I'm head of podiatry, which is quite a small department. I'm around 9 individuals working part-time and full-time. So it's quite challenging to run that sort of service across the whole of the trust in that respect. Yeah. But it was a good cohort to do, and there was a lot of buddies in there with adult therapies within this cohort. So it was very good, very challenging. A few barriers, but lots of challenges.
Brilliant. And did you want to say anything about the particular things that you've worked on, or I don't know whether you've been give them the opportunity to prepare anything, or?
Yeah, I've got a couple of slides.
Lovely.
I've got 3 minutes, which we worked on 1 minute, so I'm thinking, crikey, I've got 3 minutes. So
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, let me give you a certificate.
Okay.
I think Natasha's going to have a photo, and then we can tweet.
Okay.
And over to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Can I just get this? Is it just going down? Right, excellent. Great. So it was probably about a year ago, actually, that we concluded part of this process, and the time that it took was actually quite significant. But I've been asked to talk about, it could be the pros and cons, could be the negatives and positives. However, it's just a reflection, and it's not directed at anybody in particular. It's just what we thought about the process that we went through. And the first thing that struck us when we did this, and today, in the actual Gemba, or whatever you want to talk about, your workplace, is the language that we use, which is really important. And even to this day, this gets confused how we talk about it, because there's so many different programs, and when we talk about this, we can talk about different language, even to that Toyota production system that we think, oh, what's that? It's all about cars, isn't it? Well, it is, but it's actually a methodology that we're talking about. So that's one thing that struck us then, and it still does now when we're talking to individuals, work colleagues who are not really familiar with this but have had one-liners or talked about it. So this is really important, how we actually discuss this within the workplace and the language that we use. So you can see here that this is actually talking about the process of a Kaizen production process. So I just thought I'd lean on that from that point of view, and hopefully you're all familiar with that sort of thing. The most important thing to highlight are these issues here. They certainly weren't the only ones, but it's only 3 minutes, so I haven't got long. So these are the issues that we came across to start off with. This is a serious methodology, which is really important to get across, and it's to embed that and to find the issues about using that methodology, not to change, not to find solutions and fixes, but actually to join the conversation, to embed that conversation to start off with. And this leads to making sure that actually you need some time to do this. This is a time-consuming project with a lot of methodology behind it. So this is more to do with spending time doing, talking to people, and the reflection was that we had the ability to comfortably say something, to raise the conversation level, which is not really heard of a lot when in our sector when we're trying to treat patients, and that's all we see every day, and it's that reflection that we need to look at. So with that time-consuming effort, we need to make sure that we spend time discussing with our clinical colleagues about time management, because this is a really important part that people see this as on top of their day job, but actually this should be part of the day job. And that's really important to get across to individuals who are not au fait with this sort of process, this sort of methodology. And it's finding those happy times to discuss things and the comfortable time to actually raise this profile. And this is what the PDSA does very well, and it holds you to account, to wait for opinions, to listen more carefully. And it's a process. It's to do with and not to. And that was sort of hammered home on the course, and I think that's really important when we discuss it in the workplace, that we're doing it with and not to our staff. So this leads on to what we jumped into when we discussed this at team meetings, corridor meetings, coffee breaks, anything. And we thought, what matters the most? And it's job satisfaction, making sure we add something to the process and to produce something. And that's basically to the patient, to the clinical environment. So what we did was jumped straight into production boards, which we weren't taught about, but we just jumped in there and then said, let's do this, because this is going to be make our lives a lot easier and make a big win from our point of view. And it has so far, and it's still in its evolutional stages of changing and testing things out, which is really helpful. And that time to do that is starting to sort of gradually gain pace and allowing staff to say, can I do this? Yes. How much time do you need to do that? And that's really important to have that conversation. So on overall reflection, that it's involving enthusiastic conversations about this change. And it's a dedication to embedding this methodology within the trust, and that's really difficult when you're only talking about small individuals. And I do say this warmly and kindly that we say this. This is not a tongue-in-cheek, and it's almost like an icebreaker when we just start to discuss things and we say, well, our mate Julian is saying this, our mate Julian is doing this, or this is what came out from our mate Julian. And we start off with that process, and that kind of sort of breaks down barriers, either humour or to say, actually, let's take this seriously. This is something coming up from a high, and we're trying to embed this. So I do say that warmly and kindly if Julian actually sees this. From that point of view. And this is where this comes back to the language about embedding this process and having ownership within the workplace, and it's here to stay, which is really important that the staff hear that message. And we still talk about it on a daily process, and we want to sort of embed this within our team. We want to get more staff through this process, whatever process that is. It's just the time to do that, and that's what I found with my reflection. Thank you for listening and taking the time.
Very much,
Thank you.
Tom. Thank you. So we've got a few minutes now for questions or comments to to Tom, to Becky, to Rachel. And I have to tell you that we've got Paul and Martin sitting on the front row. Paul Jones, who's our Chief Digital and Information Officer, and Martin, who I'm not sure what your official title is, Martin, but he is really our PPM Plus expert and developer. Yeah. Guru. Yeah. So I'm sure they were listening with interest when you were talking about running from one place to another to get bits of paper.
And the number of bits of paper that you're having to get as well is shocking. But I would just reflecting, Tom, on your comments there and your reference to our mate Julian. So I'm new at the trust. This is only about week 12 for me, and we've got the Leeds improvement method, which is fantastic, and some of these report outs have been absolutely inspirational. But I wonder what your reflection. You've used a really kind of Yorkshire northern phrase there to bring it home, which is very different to a lot of the other language that's used within the Leeds improvement method. I just wonder what your reflection was, whether that language was a help or a hindrance in engaging with our staff.
It's really helpful to start the process, and it's really helpful to make sure that people realise this is serious, and it's not coming from me, it's coming from a collective sort of thing, and it's embedding it. So it really is, and we don't always say that, but it's a really good icebreaker to start with.
But I would say, is the kind of the Japanese language, those words that we use, Kaizen and Genba.
They don't know.
Do you think do they get in the way? Should we do a Yorkshire version?
They get in the way in the aspect that people are not aware of it. So it's starting the conversation, actually using that methodology language later on from that point of view. That's what it's there for. So yes, it's very Yorkshire, and we're a very down to earth team. So it's making sure there's a safe space or a space to have that conversation, and that's what's really important to do. So it's being part of our job rather than on top of our job, because that's what everyone has said to me. It's just like adding something on top of your day job as a clinical role. It's really hard on the shop floor, because you're there to see patients, and that's how people see their job role sometimes. So it's having that conversation to say your job role is this, but it includes trying to make things better, and this is how we start the process.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
Thanks. I just wanted to ask Becky a question about the work that you're doing. I'm conscious that you've really recently embarked on it. I think you said about end of week 2, so you're going through all those rocky bits at the moment. And I think it's really good to focus on how we manage people that we classify as semi-acute, because these are people that historically join a queue and people bump them, and I think that's why it's important that we do that work. And of course they can come to quite significant harm with abscesses and things that people don't always appreciate that. So I guess the question for me is, in terms of measuring your success, now that you've got the service up and running, would be one of the measures I think would be about reducing the time that people wait for those procedures. So is that one of the things that you're looking at?
So yeah, so that's like, because patients are coming to SAU and then JAL, so obviously they sat on there for a number of hours, so if they get told that they couldn't come back the next morning, they just get given the leaflets, get booked. It consented, and then they can go home and have a lovely night's sleep in their own bed rather than having to take a bed up or having to stay overnight until they see you. So I feel like, because some abscesses do have to end up staying in because it is so late, and I think these abscesses can be painful, don't get me wrong, they can be quite bad, but I feel like if we can give the patient that option of letting them go home and have a lovely night's sleep and then letting them go home the following day by the afternoon, I think keeping them in hospital unnecessarily is more patient-centred care than keeping
Just
them
for a
in
bit more
within
clarity, this is just a part of the RPI-W4. So a big part of RPI-W4 is about classification of patients and their surgeries. So this is in one section of that classification. And these are historically patients that do get booked and delayed and for clinical need, emergency room patients. So it's something as an acute service we are mindful of and we are working on. And it's like I said, this is just this cluster of patients that we realise sometimes we will deal with it, and we just want to make sure that we find a pathway that allows them to use the space in theatre efficiently, which would normally be stood down and not be used quite as effectively as we'd like it to.
I sense that Nasira was turning round and ready to.
Yeah, no, it's just really to echo what Becky and Claire have said, and I suppose really the RPIW brought light onto that subject with these particular issues.
That's really good.
Yeah, so the emergencies run in different subgroups, if you like. So you've got the laparotomies that will get into theatre because they're life-threatening conditions. But the abscesses are the problem. So the future state, the hope, the plan would be to have patients in this particular group having a same-day emergency surgery delivery. So doing what day case is done to elective work, we would expect to do the same. And this is the advent now of the ambulatory work coming through, and that would be the process. So you would come in, you would have an abscess diagnosis, and then you would then go to theatre.
Perfect.
That's the plan.
What report out is that one then?
It's coming. Paul, you had, and then Catherine.
So I just wondering, in your report out, there seems to be 2 or 3 different groups of people who didn't like you. What was it? Yeah.
Didn't like the role. Didn't like the role.
But I was just wondering if you perhaps not for you, more perhaps for others in the team, have you kind of thought about what might have been done to make that a bit easier? How could that have been softened so that they,
it was really
they weren't
difficult.
expecting it, or?
They were expecting it. It was to be expected.
The actual RPIW happened in December, the beginning of December, so then Christmas happens and everybody seems to have forgotten what actually went on. So, and it was really hard to tell the team what Becky's role was going to be because we weren't sure of it until we'd done the groundwork and Becky had actually started in that role, until we'd were able to pass it on to the team. So since we've sent the job role out and what the plan is with Becky, I think that's eased a lot of people, but I don't know how we could have preempted that until Becky was in that role. Because there isn't a role anywhere else.
It was going to happen because it's such a big change, so it was going to happen. Like, even if it was just like getting them off the bums to not have a cup of tea and getting the patient in theatre.
And that's shocking.
I think one of our biggest mental valleys is assumptions, just assuming that people know. And I think that's the imposition of silo working, is that everybody in that group feels they're doing everything they need to be, and they are. It's just the communication. Although we feel we're making headway towards connecting, I think Becky will probably be that missing link, really. And I think it's just important to have those conversations started. So I have to commend her. She's done within 2 weeks to just created quite a stir.
Jenny. Oh, sorry, Catherine, and then Jenny.
Thank you. Mine kind of is really aligned to what's just been said, actually, because mine was about, so I'm Catherine, one of the pharmacists, and I really admire your courage and passion to be able to try something new, and also the leadership around giving staff the freedom to be able to create their own jobs. and I was wondering, I don't know whether you've kind of already answered it, what would you do differently next time? What advice would you give to other colleagues and leaders who are looking to kind of do something differently, bearing in mind the fears and the vulnerabilities that people have around change, and particularly when we talk about grades of staff and different professional groups and all that kind of thing? I'm not sure if you've answered it, or if there's anything else you want to add as a result of that, because I think a lot of us need to be doing this kind of stuff, doing things really differently and thinking really differently.
I wasn't all for it at the beginning, was I? But once I looked into it, I realised it wasn't. I put myself into a situation where I thought if that was one of my family members or that was me on that front line, and I was in that position and I wanted that operation and I was getting bumped and bumped and bumped and there was no one there additionally to help me or to help speed that process up, how would I feel? So I put myself into that situation and thought, well, actually, I've got patients here that are not getting stent removals, stent reinsertions done, not getting evacuations done, ectopics, cysts like with gynae. So for example, we had a barrier this week and we had to send a patient home, didn't we, on Wednesday because we had 2 stat laparotomies that needed to come. So there was one in theatre 1 and one in theatre 2, and one of them took 7 hours. So that patient was absolutely gutted that they had to go home and come back the next morning. But I made sure she was first on the list yesterday morning, and she did get done. So, but yeah, it's just it's scary coming across these people. But I think you've just got to think of the patients.
So focus on the
patient
and the pathway,
in theatre it's
people
hard,
around
yeah.
it.
In theatre it's hard to think of them as a patient because they're asleep, like you don't get to see them awake.
They really are.
They're asleep, like you don't get to speak to them, so it was really nice to do that. Thank you.
Focus on the person.
I think I really liked where I think the conversation concluded, which is you've PDSA'd a role as well as process and ways of working, and I think that's the first time in Report Out I've heard us talking about PDSAing the role, and I'm not sure we were possibly as explicit about that going into what you did, but I'm wondering whether we need to be thinking about how, how not to be brave and chucked in, but to be very explicit that we're PDSAing the role as well as the process and the improvement. Really liked where that sort of got us to in terms of that.
We're on version 5 at the minute. That's where we've got to about
I have to say though that what's quite sad for me is to hear that we've got very senior people, senior doctors who are being challenging. There's one thing to be inquisitive. There's one thing to go to Rachel or to Claire and say, hang on a minute, what's this new role? But actually to be challenging to you, Becky, I don't think is acceptable, and I think it just shows that we've still got quite a long way to go with our Leeds Way values and behaviours. However, what we know about our consultants is the more we can communicate with them, the more that we can tell them what we are doing, actually the more that by and large that they will join in. And I don't want you to think that everybody old is a barrier to change. But you know, maybe you come across, Becky, as your passion for the patients and your resilience and personality has helped you through, along with the support from Claire and Rachel, some of those difficult times. But not everybody might have been as resilient as you to be able to PDSA.
I've had so many problems personally, like with depression and mental health, so I think that's like, it sort of like spurred me on.
Fantastic. You're a fantastic role model for us. So, finally, I was going to say...
I've not personally thanked Tom for getting through his advanced lead, because, you know, we've had a lot of people who went through it last year and some have really struggled to get through all the homework and everything. So to get through it and flag for the processes and everything, and it's really good.
Hopefully get more people through. So.
Yeah, and we've got to think, we are starting to think now as a CSU about the daily management to make it part of, you know, the daily work that we're doing rather than an add-on.
and I was just going to ask Tom, actually, Joe, thanks for doing that, but I was just going to ask you, do you think, has it helped you in your team to either just leave on time 1 day a week, or has it helped you with the planning of patient care? What's it really helped you
It's really
with?
helped with job satisfaction and knowing what we're doing when we're doing it. And this, Becky, this will go back to you as well, because you'll always get the outside version and the ability to fail, or it's not failing actually, it's letting people make up their own mind, and they'll either join or not join. And that's what Virginia Mason has taught from that point of view. So we've left on time, yes, we've left early, we've left late, but I think it's that knowing and expectation and managing that expectation which is the most important thing that we found out in our team from that point of view. And also raising the bar and raising the profile and challenging. And we're pretty good at it because we do challenge each other all the time, but it allows us to do that in a more manageable way, I suppose, rather than sort of, why are we doing this, why are we doing that? It's actually just putting that methodology and process in place, and leaning on that is really, really helpful.
Brilliant. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Next report out, Friday the 13th. So in 2 weeks' time, and back here in Bexley Wing Level 7. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just get the